Hey everybody, it's Chuck Peterson, founder of YogiChuck Insurance Services, where we help yoga instructors, yoga studios, and other conscious health and wellness experts make sure that they're properly covered and insured so that you can go out and serve and help your clients every day with the peace of mind knowing that we've got your back. So in today's installment, we're going to cover some common, frequently asked questions and coverage gaps in yoga studio policies, and also in other health and wellness gyms and different things like that. Common gaps in the coverage that the studio owner assumes are covered, but actually usually aren't unless you add on endorsements or make sure you have the proper policy in place. And I've discovered a number of these over the last several years, where I've been insuring a lot of studios and specializing in this. And these are kind of the common threads that seem to come up, and that we're able to help our clients make sure they're covered so that they can reopen their doors, should they be struck by the unthinkable, like a fire or some other type of claim, in the building that they rent or own. So having said that, we're going to jump right in today. And the common elements that are really want to focus in today on are, of course, with a yoga studio or another gym, you want to make sure you have the right coverage for your general liability, your professional liability. Make sure that there's also medical payments for participants, because a lot of times different policies exclude that. And then also the abuse and molestation coverage, making sure that that's a piece that's in there as well. Most good policies will have that, but you want to make sure those 4 items are covered. And those are the same 4 items that are also found on the individual instructor policy. And there's another video that I did that just breaks down those 4 coverages in its entirety, so go check that out if you want to get some more clarification on what those are. The other component of that with the studio is to make sure that the folks that are independent contractors for you, if you have those, which a lot of studios these days do, that those independent contractors or instructors that you hire to teach at your studio, make sure that they're covered under your policy. But you also want to make sure they have their own policy, because there are a lot of situations where they're teaching at other locations, they're teaching at other studios, they're teaching at their clients' homes and so on, where the policy that you have for the studio will not cover them as an independent contractor. So you want to make sure that you do have the coverage on the studio, that the insurance company you have does cover those independent contractors, and just ask your agent or the carrier. But then also that you recommend and encourage that those instructors get their own policy, and ideally that they list you, the studio, as additional insured, so that you're afforded some protection under their policy in the event they do something negligent and the student decides to sue both you, the studio, and the independent instructor. So any questions on that, feel free to email us, info@yogichuck.com, or set up a free consultation. We'll be happy to go into that in a lot more detail for you. But that's kind of an overview. So having said that, we're going to jump gears now to the property side of an insurance policy. And this is one that I find is often overlooked. And by property, I mean, covering your contents, covering your tenants' improvements, making sure that you have business income protection. So a lot of policies just cover the liability, and if you're not working with a trusted advisor or someone that doesn't know to look for these things, you might overlook it. And then let's say, unfortunately, that there's a claim in the building that you rent or own, and you're shut down. You can't open your classes tomorrow. What are you going to do? So we'll jump back and dive into those items in a little more detail. The business personal property, or your contents, would be your items, your business personal property in the studio. So picture computers, blocks, blankets, maybe some artwork that's hanging on the walls, as long as it's not too fancy and you don't have to schedule it separately. Different things that are in the policy that in your studio that you would need to replace if you had to go rent another space, or you had to open a studio again. A lot of times we forget that those items add up, even though they're just blocks and blankets and props and different things like that that could be relatively easy to replace. They do start to add up when you talk about computers. So a lot of times, even in a smaller studio, we'll see anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 in business personal property covered on a policy that we make sure is included it's very inexpensive to purchase that coverage, but then you have the peace of mind knowing that it's there. And you can pick the various deductibles, 500, 1,000, whatever your comfort level is on that. So that's one item that's very important. And kind of dovetailing with the business personal property, especially if you're renting the space or leasing the space, which most studios do these days, is tenants improvements and betterments. And what this means is that when you rent or lease the space from your landlord, typically you're going to do the build out as far as putting in the floor. So let's say you put in a beautiful new bamboo or banana wood floor or any other type of flooring. That could range anywhere, depending on the size, $5,000 on up to $20,000. So you want to make sure that if there's a loss and the building suffers a claim such as like water damage or fire or something like that, that you have enough coverage to be able to replace that. And a lot of people, including myself, and I don't know about you, but don't have 20 grand laying around to just put in a new floor. So you can insure that under tenants improvements, just like your business personal property, subject to a deductible. So you want to make sure that that's included. And I can't tell you how many times I see that coverage overlooked by the old broker or the old insurance company. So it's something you want to ask about. Obviously, if you own the building, you want to make sure you insure the building to the right amount, and that includes, obviously, your improvements and betterments and things you've put into the building for replacement cost, which is very important also that it's on a replacement cost basis. I don't want to overlook that. You don't want the depreciated or actual cash value. If you can, you want to insure these for replacement costs, what it would cost to put in a new floor, not what the depreciated floor is. So you want to make sure that that's on there. Just like your homeowners or your renter's policy that you have now for your personal life. The other item we're going to dive into here is business income protection or loss of income. So once again, if for some reason the space that you occupy suffers a loss and you're stuck, you don't have income all of a sudden coming in because you don't have classes running. So your clients are displaced, you're displaced. Now you've got to, there's two components here. One is you've got to continue paying certain bills. Maybe you stop some of them that kind of stop because now that you don't have a space, but certain bills will continue. Trust me, it happens in every business. There's a lot of different bills that continue even though your space is no longer able to be used. So you have to have business income protection that will essentially pay you for a certain number of months and a limit that you pick. That we work together to come up with the right limit to protect you, that for a certain number of months or time it will pay up to a certain dollar figure for you to continue paying expenses, making sure that if payroll is included that you continue your payroll, and making sure that if you have to continue paying your rent even though your building's not there, that you can pay that. Any utilities, some obviously will stop because you're not using the space, different things like that. But there's going to be continued payments, loan payments maybe, different things that you started the business. Very important. Paying yourself too. Obviously now this may be your main source of income and you're in trouble. And then in addition to that, there's also business income and extra expense. And what that means is extra expense to rent a new space while your space is being fixed. So let's say the building owner can't rebuild this building for 8 months. Well, for the next 8 months, you've got to find a temporary home for your studio, or else your students are going to go somewhere else and maybe follow a new loyalty with another studio or something. You want to keep them consistent with your studio. So you definitely want to have that as well, so that you can get back up and running and minimize your business income loss expense. I can't tell you again how many policies I don't see any business income on. So it's very important to look into that. So those are the 3 items I wanted to talk about today on a studio that are often overlooked on the property side, which again, just the property side alone is often overlooked because everyone says, oh, a yoga studio doesn't need business personal property. But I would argue that it does. There are tenants improvements. There are business income things to consider. So those are the 3 things you want to make sure are covered. Business personal property, tenants improvements and betterments, and also business income protection. And in future installments, we'll dive a little bit deeper into making sure, like I said, additional insureds for your instructors, making sure that your studio you've looked into discussing workers' compensation issues, possibly even health care for employees, and also disability protection for yourself and so on. So we'll dive into a lot more of that. As far also international retreats. Can I use candles in my classes? Based on insurance requirements and different carriers. A whole host of things that come up. Off-premises events. There's this whole landscape is changing, and there's so many new modalities being introduced, and the insurance companies are, quite frankly, trying to keep up with what you're doing as you create new modalities, new trips, new retreats. And it's exciting, but it's also something we want to make sure that we look at the policy documents correctly. We discuss what your exposures are. We make sure we properly address them. So I want to thank you for your time. As always, feel free to leave us a comment in the Facebook section of the blog and or on YouTube, and check out future videos. And until the next time, we've got your back with the peace of mind knowing that you're properly insured. And if you have any questions, email us as always, info@YogiChuck.com, or check out the website, www.YogiChuck.com. And until then, I hope you keep going out and serving your clients and keep teaching them with the peace of mind knowing that we've got your back. Thanks. Have a good one. Namaste.